are starving and fleeing the continuation of that violence today, and we must find the courage and set the intention to move from reflection into action. Ramadan Mubarak to those who celebrate. May all communities be sustained for the next 7 generations and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kelly. Welcome everybody to our live stream fundraiser here for the Jill Stein 2024 campaign. My name is Jason Call. I am the campaign manager. Kelly, who just gave the land acknowledgement, is our deputy campaign manager. Before we get started with our esteemed candidate and our special guest, I do want to remind everybody that this is a fundraising event. We are here to raise some money for this campaign. We all need to understand that grassroots campaigns are not funded by large corporations and their PACs. Those corporations typically are working against the things that we are working for, like clean air, water, and land, an uncorrupted government, peace and justice, healthcare, and housing for all, to name but a few. So as we are listening to Jill and our special guest, who will be introduced soon, I want us all to keep in mind that the grassroots organizations really depend on all of us, our volunteer efforts, and our donation efforts. So we have a lofty goal for this. I'm going to talk about our goals a little bit later on. But there is some big money that we need to raise. We have some massive obstacles in front of us that have been set by the corporate duopoly for ballot access in some upcoming states, New York, Illinois, Indiana, Georgia, among the ones that are critical for us right now. So as you are thinking about how can you best spend your time to help this effort to be the premier challenge, as we will be, and I should say as we are, the premier challenge to the corporate duopoly, think about what you can give, the time you can give, the money that you can give to this effort. We do have some exciting news. We have completed, pending paperwork. We have completed our matching funds drive, which means all of your donations, once we get our paperwork processed, will be matched up to $250. So this is a double your money opportunity if you're giving up to $250. Certainly, if you're able to give more, we're asking that you give more than that. We've had a fantastic road trip over the last few weeks. Jill and Kelly are back from a 3-week, 15-state road trip where we visited close to the 24 communities and met with people on the ground, the Muslim community, the student community, the Black community, healthcare workers, to discuss the critical needs, places like East Palestine, Ohio, who are still devastated with chemical poisoning from the train spill, the train derailment that happened, that was as a result of corporate malfeasance. I want to make sure everybody understands that we are in these situations because of corporate malfeasance. This campaign is the way to fight back, and we are going to be the strongest opposition to that corporate malfeasance in the upcoming election. So I don't want to belabor those kind of things. I want to get right to introducing sort of my partner in crime here over the last 10 weeks, Kelly Merrill. She's done a fantastic job being with Jill in many places on the road. And we have many more places that we are going to visit. But coming to us from Maine, I would like to welcome, and I'm coming to you from a little bit north of Seattle. I would like to welcome my partner in crime here, Kelly Merrill, and she's going to give the introductions upcoming. Thank you so much. And remember, this is a fundraiser. We need people to dig deep. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason. Thanks for the introduction and welcome, everybody. In a time of unprecedented economic disparity, racial inequities, environmental devastation, mass violence, and genocide, it is imperative to self-reflect and course correct. We must organize and rally to leverage collective power. It is what this campaign is all about. I have the great privilege of serving as a deputy campaign manager for Jill Stein's 2024 presidential run and working with an amazing ever-growing team of organizers, activists, volunteers, and creatives from all over the country who are rallying to provide a choice for the American people. We are organizing around the clock to put forth the one candidate who matches our values and who will be on the ballot across the country this November. Jill Stein is that choice. Jill Stein is the only moral choice in an election considered the most important of our lifetime and one with terrifying consequences for inaction. With converging existential crises and unbroken genocidal ties from the past into the present, it is essential that this campaign be an agent of change for a more just and equitable world, one that centers relationship with people and planet and submits to the law of nations. It is the only choice that is compatible with life. As we watch Democracy Now!, Al Jazeera News, and other truth tellers, we are fully and painfully aware of the horrors being visited upon the world in our name and with our money. But it is also true that we are at a moment in time of unprecedented potentiality. People are waking up to the insanity of global imperialism. The need for change has never been so clear, and we have never been better positioned for that change. Together, we can empower the people, stop the genocide, and honor the earth. Our lives and our futures depend on it. Tonight, we will hear presidential candidate Jill Stein and DC congressional candidate Kimon Freeman. After that conversation, we will fundraise to fuel this endeavor and then take some questions from our audience. We are so honored to be here tonight with you and community. We are the ones we have been waiting for, and Jill, myself, Jason, and everyone on this team invite you to join and fuel this movement. Thank you so much for being here. I'd like to introduce the candidates for tonight's conversation. DC congressional candidate Kimon Freeman is an award-winning playwright, activist, and political commentator. The Catalog for Philanthropy honored him with the 2022 Changemaker Award. He is a co-founder of We Act Radio, recognized as DC's best social justice station in 2017 by Washington City Paper, and earned first place in the 2017 Public Media Journalists Association Award. Freeman founded the Black LUV Festival in 1997 and was honored at the Kennedy Center as a Mayor's Art Award finalist for excellence in service to the arts. PBS Online Film Festival produced his documentary short, Fresh Prince of Anacostia. His work, Can Anacostia Build a Bridge Without Displacing Its People?, has appeared in the Washington Post, the Washington Informer, and the New York Times. He has appeared nationally and internationally on BBC, French 24 TV, German ZDF, RT, CGTN America, Cuban National TV, and TV1. Freeman is a Douglas Community Land Trust board member. He is the author of Nineveh, A Conflict Over Water, published through Strong Arm Press. And he is now a revolutionary Green Party congressional candidate for DC delegate, challenging the 34-year incumbent.
Thank you.
Jill Stein is a Harvard-trained physician, a pioneering environmental activist, and presidential candidate. She is a truth teller who has campaigned and organized around a number of reforms, including climate change, income inequalities, campaign finance reform, racially just redistricting, and social justice of all kinds. She has been published in multiple peer-reviewed journals regarding toxic environmental threats to health. She has served on the board of Physicians for Social Responsibility, has worked against coal plants in Massachusetts, and played a key role in rewriting her state's fish advisories to better protect women, children, indigenous communities, and immigrants from mercury contamination. She also helped preserve the moratorium on new toxic trash incinerators in her state. Jill has received awards for her work since the 90s. Those awards have included Clean Water Action's Not in Anyone's Backyard Award, the Children's Health Hero Award, and the Toxic Action Center's Citizen Award. Through her work, Jill has brought to the forefront the issues of single-payer healthcare, reparations, forgiveness of student debt, and many other issues. She has run as a pro-Palestinian candidate since 2012. She was a presidential candidate for the Green Party in 2012 and 2016, and has been working for the benefit of people and planet since. Please welcome 2024 presidential candidate Dr. Jill Stein and DC congressional candidate Kimon Freeman.
Peace and blessings. Nice to meet the cat.
Pat really wants to be in the camera, as you've noticed, so I'm just going to let him, join the party.
Well, let me just say again, I know it's our second time together, but it's an honor to be in communication with you. We have a lot of people representing us, but we have very few people serving us. And your campaign is one of many that is challenging that. So thank you.
Right back at you, Kimon. It's really such an honor because I've greatly admired your work over the years, and it's just really awesome to see you now challenging power and leading the charge. So just so excited about your example.
Since you're bringing it up, we actually met at the Green Festival here in Washington, D.C., and you was one of the few people who was willing to speak to indie media and sat down and do an interview, and we had an opportunity to speak at length. And I was so grateful for that, because very few of our so-called representatives, again, actually serve us. So they are not as comfortable with actually speaking to the public off the cuff. As I think of you, I think of John Conyers and a handful of others who were able to do that. So I wanted to publicly thank you, because oftentimes, if it's not mainstream media, a lot of people of your caliber will pass us by, and I really was appreciative of that opportunity to build with you at that time. So thank you again, and so to be with you now and to see what you have been able to do, because the Green Party, I told you all, your whole team, I think this is the year. I think that we have so many people who are disenchanted with both of the corporate political monopoly, and that the poor choice of candidates this year is a testimonial to that, and that we're on track to making sure that we exceed that 5% national vote threshold to break that monopoly, get this party on the national stage, and hear more diverse voices when it comes to anti-war. And I don't think we are actually politicians. I think we're the humanitarians who are trying to bring humanity to the political arena. And I think this is the year to do it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I want to say that, the kind of work that you've been doing in the grassroots, serving the community of, by, and for the people, to my mind, that is like exemplary for what we're all about and what our campaigns have to be about. Our campaigns really have to grow out of our grassroots work and our work in the communities. And you've always been kind of a shining example for me since the first time we met. I think it was in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, when we did that interview. And our paths have crossed a couple times since then. And you've always been, for me, at the cutting edge, really pushing the envelope. And it was like just kind of beyond my wildest dreams to see that you were jumping into the race, and you're now making the work political as it has to be. And
yeah.
So,
unfortunately, it took a genocide for me to do it. It took a genocide for me to step outside my comfort zone.
wow.
Do what needs to be done here in the nation's capital, because we don't have a vote. For those who do not know, DC has a higher population in several states, pays more taxes in several more states, and yet we have taxation without representation. That was, those was fighting words for this country in its inception when it broke with England and started the American Revolutionary War. But yet we still maintain it in the nation's capital. So we don't have a vote, but we do have a voice. And so I'm doing our best I can to raise those voices here in the nation's capital. Everyone comes to the protest march and to be heard. And I want to make sure that the voices outside of the corporate media are being heard.
Exactly. And I think at a time when DC really needs representation, there's no one better positioned to fight for that than you and your voice. And these two fights come together, the fight for, the agenda for people, planet, and peace, basically, which is being thoroughly trashed from the halls of power, and the fight for representation at the same time. And it's just really exciting that you're going to be there as one of the leading voices. And a case in point, I just want to mention, by way of underscoring how really critical it is that we get behind, campaigns like Camone's and the campaign that we represent. We just saw Congress pass this, whatever it was, like $1.5 trillion budget bill for the 2024 fiscal year budget. And 68% of that budget, $1.1 trillion, is for either the military or for policing, like the military abroad and the military come home by way of militarized police force. This is just staggering. We're used to the conventional wisdom, which was outrageous enough, that half of our congressional budget is being spent on war. But in reality, it's actually now more than 2/3 of our budget, if you also include basically militarism in its domestic forms, with border control and the FBI and the CIA and policing, plus militarism. It's actually 68%. It's astounding. And you had the Democrats vote in lockstep. So it was a solid Democratic vote in the Senate without dissent. The Republicans kind of shamed them by splitting in support and opposition to this bill. One of the big problems with the bill is that it spends, aside from that it's mostly militarism bill, it's also appropriating another $3.8 billion for Israel, a freebie to basically continue its genocide and expanding the war, which is just shocking. The bill also will cancel all potential support for the starving people of Gaza. It cancels support for UNRWA, UNRWA, for at least, I think it's the duration of this year. Like, everybody would be gone by then if this was left to the devices of our criminal representatives in the Senate and Congress. I mean, to my mind, this is like signing a confession of being a war criminal to have voted in support of this bill. And at a time when 68% of the American public wants an immediate ceasefire and a negotiated diplomatic solution, it's just unthinkable that our Congress is doing that with our tax dollars. So to have such a strong, powerful, and courageous voice as yours, Camone's, to be, joining this battle and really leading the charge for Congress, I think is unbelievably exciting. And it's just such an honor to be here with you.
Likewise, Martin Luther King said that a nation that spends more on military defense, militarism, war, than programs of social uplift is approaching spiritual doom. And so there we have it, because all that money that you just said has been allocated for these things, but yet and still Flint, Michigan still doesn't have clean water. Still doesn't have clean water. And I want people to pay very close attention to that, because if you go back and look at the speech that Barack Obama gave in Flint, Michigan, he actually coughed a dozen times throughout that speech and asked for water twice before someone finally brought him a glass, not a bottle of water, which I'm all against the plastic bottle of water, of course, because that's actually the capitalization of the water crisis. But he was performing political theater to reassure the people in Flint, Michigan, that the water was okay to drink, but yet and still it's not the case still today. And so, and today, and this is March 22nd was World Water Day. So the UN acknowledges this as World Water Week. And I'm wearing a shirt that says, drink water, love hard, and fight racism, in that order, and I tried to address that issue. I have a book called Nineveh, A Conflict Over Water, and I urge people to check that out because sometimes it's the stories that people remember. So like when I sit here and say that, by the year 2050, it's going to be more plastic in the ocean than fish, they might forget that. But if I tell them a story of how I was in Nairobi and I saw a small child getting dirty water out of a stream with a goat a few feet away drinking out of the same water access, and we was told that we had to brush our teeth with bottled water. So I came home and told us a story of trying to encompass all of that information to wake people up to understand. I think it was Harry Belafonte by way of Paul Robeson. It says that artists are the gatekeepers of truth, that they are civilization's radical voice. So sometimes it's the art and it's the stories that people remember, and that's what gets people to take action. So I want everybody to understand that we've seen how water's been weaponized in Palestine, and we have a lead problem right here in America. And if we don't have the courage to challenge the status quo, my whole campaign is based upon the radical side of Martin Luther King. He says that we need a revolution of values. And so therein lies the work that needs to be done. We have to rip the power from the warmongers and actually do something for the people. So we have to understand how to connect what's happening over there and how it's impacting us here. And once that happens, then all bets are off. I think even Dwight Eisenhower, who's not a pacifist, President Eisenhower was talking about every gun, every ship, every bullet constitutes death of the working class, from the schools, from the roads, and what have you. In Baltimore, we just saw a bridge collapse, and so we have a lack of investment in infrastructure. And you saw what happened when they tried to pass the Green New Deal that would have really turned this ship around. But these are things that we are charged to challenge, and I hope that the not just the Green Party, but all the people who love what is your campaign? People, planet, and peace will rally around so we can hit that threshold of 5% in the national vote this general election come November.
Thank you so much. And I want to piggyback on that to encourage people to, consider the sky the limit in this election. There's every reason for us to expect the unexpected in this election. There are going to be 4 pro-genocide candidates: Trump, Biden, No Labels, and RFK. They could wind up splitting the corporate genocide pro-war vote. We're on track right now to be the only campaign on the ballot across the country to truly challenge empire, to truly contest for power. You have to be on the ballot across the country in order to do that. Otherwise, you'll have a powerful symbolic voice, and that's great, but you're not actually contesting for power. Right now, we are the only such campaign, which is pro-worker, anti-war, anti-genocide, and climate emergency. We're the only such campaign which is headed for ballot access across the whole country. We currently are 3/4 of the way there. If you add up all the signatures that you need, it's about 1 million signatures across the country. 3/4 of that work has already been done, largely thanks to the state parties. Big shout out for all the state parties that have been working on this and watchdogging this actually for years. That's why we are where we are right now. We're continuing that battle. Most of it is behind us, which is incredible. RFK, for all his talk, for all the big money that he's got in his super PAC, he's on the ballot right now in like 4 states, I think, 4. We're on in 21, but that includes some of the most expensive, largest, most difficult states, including California and Texas, Florida, Arizona, several others, lots of states, including most of the big ones. And that is huge. So we are the one campaign which is on track. And what we're doing tonight is trying to raise basically the down payment for one of the remaining difficult states. Jason mentioned a couple of them. There are three big ones: New York, Indiana, and Illinois. Those are the three biggest, most expensive. And there are one or two others in there, but those are the three leading campaigns. And it's Indiana that we have to move on most quickly. And we have a very good deal that was offered. We're a volunteer-based, ballot drive, but there are places where we need support because the battle is that difficult, and there are that many signatures required. Indiana is one of them. We don't have a big party in Indiana, so we're going to have to provide them some help. And we got a great offer for a really fabulous petitioner who will help us, but we have to provide a down payment this week, which is why the heat is really on and we're really turning the crank. You'll hear more about that, but I want everyone to just recognize that we are the one people-powered force that's going to be on the ballot. Right now, there's a lot of discussion about, oh, there's this progressive and this progressive, but in fact, there's only going to be one progressive option that's actually on the ballot across the country. So things are going to start getting very clear. The other piece of really good news I want to put out is that we just heard that we are now at 12% age 35 and under. 12% among young people who are really like the weathermen that show which way the wind is blowing. So the early adopters are shining a light on our campaign, as they did for the Sanders race when he was first launching, and as they've done for so many things, like including the fight in the civil rights movement and the sit-ins at the lunch counters and things like that. Social change is led by the younger generation, and they are discovering us in a big way. We're actually catching up to RFK. In the polling among young people now. We still have ways to go, but we're getting there. And we are light years ahead of all the other candidates at this point, all the other progressive and smaller candidates. So we're going forward. And that's why, I'm telling people 5% is the floor, but it could easily be a winning percentage. When you have 5 candidates, the 4 pro-war candidates and us, that's 5 candidates. If they're dividing up the vote, it's possible mathematically to actually win the race with as little as 21% of the vote. That's not to say that's necessarily how it's going to turn out, but a plurality, which is getting the largest chunk, can win the vote. It's not like we have to get to 51%. So I really want people to just think in terms of what we deserve and the uprising that's happening right now. This is the time to harness that. And the next step to do that actually is to lock in on Indiana, which we hope to do tonight by raising this $30,000. So consider the sky the limit. And anyone who tells you we can't do it, it's like, just tune them out. Everything is possible right now. This is an unprecedented perfect storm for peaceful political revolution, which we badly need.
Absolutely. I want to give some ammunition to all the Green Party supporters out there, because they are up against the status quo in terms of people, they can't win and da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, here's some things that might help you. One, the clinical definition of insanity is doing the same exact thing, expecting a different outcome. So how much longer are we going to do this whole dance of the lesser of two evils, or in this case, four evils? But how long are we going to do that dance? And a lot of people are familiar with Martin Luther King's last speech, but they're not as familiar with his next to his last speech, which was delivered right here in Washington, D.C., March 31st, 1968. It was entitled Remaining Awake During a Great Revolution. He goes on to say that far too often people find themselves living in periods of great social change, but yet they fail to develop the new ideas, the new mental responses that the new situation demands. They end up sleeping through a revolution. And I submit to you that's the quintessential definition of stay woke, which is why our enemies have turned that into a pejorative. And so we need to make sure that we don't fall asleep at the wheel and wake up in this revolution and at this moment, because this is our time and this is the moment. And the way you sounded, we should have the largest voter turnout for third party in the history of America. This is within reach. This is within grasp. But at the same time, to hear you say that you need this money to get on the ballots and and that not a question of the petitions and support, do you actually need money? You actually need the resources, which reminds me of what Jimmy Carter had to say, actually on Tom Hartman's show. Your good friend Tom Hartman, Dr. Stein. But he said that America is not a democracy. This is an oligarchy. The former president of these United States says that this is not a democracy. It is an oligarchy. So I'm giving ammunition to all the Green Party supporters who have to try to justify their actions, their progressive actions, their revolutionary actions to those who are less progressive and less revolutionary, and quite frankly, just simply afraid. Oh, well, we have to save democracy. You can quote directly from Jimmy Carter, who said, well, we already lost it. This is not a democracy, it's an oligarchy. So you basically saying whoever has the most lawn signs, whoever has the biggest advertising budget, those are the winners. That's the metric that we're following. And for the vast majority of us, we will acknowledge openly that most of our politicians are moderates and gatekeepers for the status quo. So we having said all that, this is our time to really flip the tables like Jesus and change the outcome of this election by having the record highest turnout for third party. And we can do it. We just have to make sure that we are bold, brave, and unafraid. And I think that the vast majority of the American public will be behind us if they see a pathway for victory. They see a way that they're going to be empowered, because normally they're disappointed because most of these politicians, they campaign in what they say in poetry and they govern in prose, and so that's where we have that constant disappointment, you know. But and talk about disappointment. How many people was disappointed in Barack Obama? How in fact there was people who voted for Barack Obama twice and then turned around and voted for Trump. No one's really talking about that. That's a pretty weird dynamic there. And I submit that Michael, what's our brother from Fahrenheit 9/11? Michael Moore. Michael Moore. He kind of gave a great explanation for that. These are just people who are simply looking for change. At the time, they thought Barack Obama was a symbol of change, and then at the time they thought Trump was going to drain the swamp. You know, these weren't the racists that stormed the Capitol. These were a very weird dynamic, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in this election. But I think that you have the wind beneath your wings. I think that we're on the right side of history. I think this ongoing genocide has shaken up a lot of people who otherwise would have been sitting on the fence or sitting it out, as they say. And I think this is going to give them the motivation to do something.
I couldn't agree more. In our recent 3-week tour of whatever it was, 10 states, I don't recall the exact number, 21 cities. We went a lot of places. We were in real red territory. We were in Kentucky. We were in Ohio and East Palestine, and in the most unlikely places when you wouldn't have thought there was a strong anti-genocide movement. It was that was about the strongest thing out there. It's bringing all kinds of people into the fight. We were at a mosque recently in Baltimore, and we were seated. This was for a Ramadan iftar, breaking of the fast, and we were seated at a table with some political operatives. We were sort of at the political table, and there were some staffers there for some Democratic elected officials, and they were telling us in confidence that it's over for them, that they cannot bring themselves, even as staffers for Democrats, they cannot bring themselves to actually vote for Biden because of the genocide. So, it's out there, and people are not going to take this sitting down. And it is a transformative moment. Gaza is a microcosm of American militarism. Ronald Reagan's Secretary of Defense, Caspar Weinberger, described Israel as the unsinkable battleship for the Middle East. And, you know, namely to give the US control over Middle Eastern oil. We needed it back in the 1980s. We don't need it now. We're the major exporter of fossil fuels around the world, thanks to Barack Obama and Joe Biden, who elevated us on that. And so we are here like trying to mobilize people, and people are coming out and they get it, that this is just not going to solve itself. And there's so many reasons now why people are standing up to fight. So Reagan is saying, you know, that Israel is the unsinkable battleship, and people widely now are standing up to fight that because the U.S. empire demands to have control. And while we were controlling the fossil fuel supply for our own sake back in the 80s, now we don't need that oil anymore. And we're controlling it because that's just what we do. We control the fuel that other nations need. So we are seizing upon, Israel as our continuing battleship. And this is a disaster.
Absolutely.
The U.S. has been conducting war after war, which has been catastrophic, according to the Brown University Cost of War Project. We have killed somewhere between 4 and 6 million people in the post 9/11 wars. So Gaza is a horrific genocide, but it comes after a long line of outrageous killings, whether you call them genocide or just, civilians in the line of fire. These are wars that are completely unjustified and, outrageous, are really pure exercise of militarism and global domination. And they've got to be stopped. Our position in the world now is extremely untenable. We have 3 points of conflict, at least, just to look at Ukraine and China and Gaza, which could blow up on us because we are bombing 4 countries and we are also bombing Iranian targets. So you put that all together. Iran is now allied with Russia in a military pact. So this is like pre-World War I. But with nuclear weapons thrown into the mix. So this could arguably blow up on us. It's not just Gaza in the target hairs. Israel is severely in the target hairs and becoming a complete pariah, mobilizing its neighbors against it. And because this is potentially go nuclear, we are all in the target hairs of this. So just to make the point that there is a transition that has to happen now. This is both about stopping genocide, but it's also about stopping empire and the oligarchy that goes with it. And again, referencing Martin Luther King, militarism, racism, and extreme materialism, aka capitalism now in its end stages, they all go together. And we need a system change. We're not going to fix this around the margins. And that's what we've always been about here in the Green Party. And I just really want people to have the courage of their convictions and to remember that there is no lesser evil. We've got 2 greater evil parties right now. And those are the other choices. It's our job to get on with the greater good. Forget the lesser evil. Let's go for the greater good. That's like our only way out of here alive for ourselves, for all humanity. So just, really thanking everybody for leading us to this perfect storm now for absolutely transformative change. And having people like Kimon Freeman in the mix here is just so wonderful. And I have to say, we're seeing incredible Green Party candidates at all levels, but particularly at the level of Congress that are standing up to fight this fight. It's just really a wonder to behold.
Yeah, and even your campaign manager, Jason Carl, I want to shout him out because he's risen to the occasion as well. I hope that you guys can save the transcript of the chats because the chats are lit right now. So I've been so if you see my eyes diverted because I'm seeing some of the comments in the chats, and I really appreciate a lot of it. I wanted to respond to a couple of them. Someone was talking about how the mainstream media will continue to ignore you. My mentor was Kevin Z. Someone else in the chat said, "Hey, I remember you working for Ralph Nader back in 2004." And I'm like, "Yeah, I actually did." So I actually started working for Ralph Nader, and Kevin Zeese got me that gig. I was a spokesperson for him in New York City. I was a crime buster driving vehicles around. And after that campaign, Kevin Zeese ran for the Maryland Senate, U.S. Senate for Maryland. Ben Cardin won that. Michael Steele and Ben Cardin was the candidates for that. And Michael Steele, the Republican candidate, allowed Zeese to participate in the debates because he thought that would help him by shaving votes from Ben Cardin. And so they would have debates, and the media would completely ignore Kevin Zeese's presence in those debates. But the Washington Post took a picture and they cropped it, so only you have Michael Steele and Ben Cardin. But Kevin Zeese wisely inserted himself by throwing his arm into the picture. So it's two candidates with 5 arms. So they had to identify the 5th arm, you know. And so I think that we have to identify our 5th arm, which is independent media. And the mainstream media is no longer the only store in town, because the cat's out the bag. The technology has really democratized the flow of information, and that's why they're trying to reel us back. That's why the FCC tried to create a toll roll for social media and the free flowing of internet access. That's why we have the algorithms, but they can't stop it. That's why they're trying to ban TikTok, but they can't stop it. And so I think that we're looking at, as you said, late stage capitalism. I think that's applicable also to our corporate media. Like NBC is bracing for the backlash to the backlash of hiring and firing the RNC Republican chairman and election denier, you know. And so I don't think people are really putting the validity behind the corporate media as much anymore. We need to see us convalescing around independent media outlets. For example, like, it's not just you going to be missed out in the mainstream media, but South Africa's foreign minister, Dr. Nadia Pandor, who sat down with Mehdi Hassan. I hope I'm not butchering these names.
Yeah, no,
on his new independent media outlet, Zeto. See her. I haven't seen her on CNN. I haven't seen her on MSNBC. I've heard of attacked by mainstream media, but I haven't seen her speak on mainstream media. So here's the foreign minister of South Africa who's taking Israel before the international court with charges of genocide. And and you would think that a former apartheid state would know something about apartheid, you know. So for that to be missing in mainstream media just goes to further devalidate the whole premise that they know what's best. We are breaking this parental relationship where they tell us, they march out who they approve of. Because in fact, in Washington, D.C., having an endorsement by the Washington Post is not actually a good thing locally. A candidate gets the Washington Post endorsement is not a good look for voters in D.C. They're looking at you sideways with that. And so I think we are changing, as I keep saying, you know, our campaign slogan, a revolution of values. I think we are creating a different value system. And I love what you said. You said that no more of the lesser two evils, we're going for the greater good. That should be a hip hop quote right there. No more of the lesser two evils, but we're going to go for the greater good. And so hopefully we will see indie media getting behind these campaigns and getting behind the challenges that we're putting forth here today.
Yeah, I love it. And talking about, you know, mainstream media and the farce, the sham, you know, that people don't buy into. You know, if you get an endorsement for the Washington Post, that's a bad thing. Well, it's like, you know, the American public now on polls, people say, the majority, in fact, now say that what mainstream media says, they assume is false, that mainstream media is purposely misleading us and purposely lying to us. And that's kind of true. You know, if it's important, they're probably lying about it, you know, and they're keeping good news from us, and, you know, they're just manipulating and distorting things and basically protecting power, because that's what journalism is nowadays. It's lapdog journalism. Journalism is supposed to be watchdog journalism. That's why we have a First Amendment and freedom of the press and freedom of the speech. And we rely on press, especially to watchdog foreign policy, because how are you supposed to see what's going on there? So anyhow, let them go ahead and smear us and ignore us, because they've now kind of become public enemy number one. That is, mainstream media is kind of public enemy number one. So let them smear us and, kind of elevate our stature by being smeared by them. And last thing I want to say here is just kind of the joke that the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, now has announced that they will be purposefully smearing us, and they will also be trying to, quote, complicate our ballot access campaigns. They've hired an army of lawyers, an army of corporate lawyers. That's how the Democratic Party is protecting democracy, by hiring an army of corporate lawyers to throw their competition off the ballot. So
They
if
did to
this
Bernie.
isn't, what's that?
Look what they did to Bernie.
Yeah, exactly.
own
Rigging their own
proposals,
elections,
their
suppressing
own.
their debates. It's a joke. So we have a job to do here, to fulfill the promise of our democracy, which has never been fulfilled, but it's really in the tank right now. So we got a job to do. It's a really great time to do it, and no better team to be doing it with than all of us who are here tonight. And thank you so much, Kimon. I see Jason coming on. Are you
I
about
am.
to jump in?
This is a wonderful segue. And I think I was going to bring this up about what the DNC is threatening us with. They are putting this out in the public unabashedly, that they are willing to kill democracy for their own purposes, but they say, quote unquote, we're saving democracy because we can't let it fall into Trump's hands. And actually, Jill, before we actually go into the fundraising, there have been some questions in the chat about how do you address, and I think back to, you were on Punch Up Pod last night, and you gave a magnificent answer, and I wouldn't be able to do it justice right now. But if we could address right now, before we go into the fundraising ask, how do you talk to people who are in fear of another Trump presidency? What is really at stake right here in 2024? Can you talk about that for just a couple minutes?
There are so many ways to answer this. I could go on for quite a while, so I'll just start going through the litany. And by the way, we have a number of videos about this that are often a good way to kind of just like reference it and kind of develop those talking points yourself, so you can just draw on them. And there are many of them, and different talking points speak to different people. But one of the things we say is that there's no greater trademark of fascism. People are always worried about Trump. Oh, he's the fascist. Yeah, he's very fascist. But actually, so is Biden, and the Democrats. They throw people off the ballot. They have descended deep into big money and dark money. In fact, they rely typically on more dark money. They've gotten very good at the dark money game than the Republicans do. They are criminalizing protests to look at what's going on at Cop City, and there are dozens of Cop cities around the country, and they are basically criminalizing protesters, the African-American community that's standing up basically to defend its little piece of open space and forest, which is critical for our health and our survival and the clean water and all that. They have been criminalized. They've been leading the fight. And in the effort to put this on the ballot, you have the Democrats. It's a Democratic administration that's fighting this, that's trying to keep it off the ballot. I mean, it's a total joke. It's absolutely outrageous. Leading the fight for censorship, that's been the Democrats leading the charge on that too. The Republicans aren't far behind. It's again how we got two greater evil parties here. But they are all, in the business of assaulting our democracy. And the biggest trademark of any, of fascism is genocide. And there it has been Joe Biden and the Democrats who've been leading the charge into the genocide. And again, Trump is not far behind, but the Democrats led the charge here, and they started it and gave Israel basically the full thumbs up. Go ahead, blank check. So, it's not like, oh, Trump is going to bring fascism, but we're doing just fine. No, we're in complete fascism. And besides, it's been the betrayal of the Democrats that empowered the Republicans. So it's not like we save ourselves by further empowering the Democrats that people vote against by supporting Trump. So it's a very sick and toxic system, and don't let them persuade you that you have to be a part of it. Think of this as an abusive relationship that you have to break up with. People in abusive relationships make excuses for their abusers for a long time, often, and then suddenly wake up and discover, oh my God, I don't have to make excuses for this relationship, which is destroying me, which is hurting me. That's part of it. Another talking point is that no one owns your vote. They have to earn your vote. The biggest demographic out there are the non-voters. It was 100 million people in our last race in 2016, a little bit less than that in 2020. But that is a huge demographic. That's largely where third party, that is grassroots, progressive third party votes, green votes, come from, people who otherwise are going to stay home. So it's not like you can move the vote from one column to another. That's just BS. That's just intended to intimidate you. This is basically a politics of fear, as Kimon said. And where have we gotten with the politics of fear? The politics of fear has delivered everything that we were afraid of. All the reasons you were supposed to vote Democratic, because you wanted healthcare as a human right, or you wanted to save the climate, or, you didn't want to be going to war with some warmonger. It's the Democrats who are really leading the charge on a lot of this, or they've at least adopted the horrific policies of the Republicans, like on immigration, for example. On climate, Joe Biden has basically promoted and permitted these 22 liquid natural gas export facilities. Why did he do that? Because he created a huge market by destroying the Nord Stream pipeline. So celebration, high fives all around. They blew up this pipeline, and now they can sell all this methane gas. Well, it just so happens, to Europe and replace the Russian gas that we destroyed. But it just so happens that producing this methane gas is like the most toxic things for the environment imaginable. And according to the Sierra Club, these 22 liquid natural gas export facilities moves us back to 2005 climate emissions. So all the progress that's been made for 2 decades is being reversed by Joe Biden right now. Okay, I think that's bigger than anything I have heard of that Trump or anyone else has done. So forget the BS. It's pure BS. It's pure self-serving BS. And I'd say just remember 2 things. Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand, never has, never will. We got to bring that demand into political discourse. If we don't do it, it ain't happening. And if you allow them to silence you through fear, extorting your vote, whatever, shaming you, if you allow them to silence you, then it doesn't exist. Our demand, our moral compass, our priorities, our agenda, it doesn't exist. So it's not like going along to get along gets you somewhere. It completely removes you from the political process, and that's exactly what they want. So Frederick Douglass is one, and the other one is Alice Walker, who said, the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we have it to start with. Kimon and I both rely on this on a regular basis. I do every day, we have that power, and we have that power now, and there couldn't be a better, more critical moment to invoke that power and use it. Don't let them try to talk you out of it. Just, eyes on the prize. We are going for success. Whether we win the White House, turn the White House into a greenhouse, which would be great for the whole world, or we just win the day by building a stronger base. Maybe we're 5%, maybe we're 12%, maybe we're 23%, and we win it in a 5-way race. Whatever it is a victory. We win by engaging the fight. If we don't engage the fight, it's all over and we've lost.
The door is cracked open, and we just need to put our toe in the door, and we need to lean against that door with everything that we have, because the future relies on us. And so the quote that you said in the middle of that, which is something you've said over and over again, and something that I really want people to take away from, is that voting out of fear has brought us everything that we are afraid of. both of these corporate war machine and Wall Street parties are pointed in the wrong direction to a greater or to lesser degree. We don't even need to compare them. They are simply both pointed in the wrong direction, and our policies are pointed in the right direction. So I am now going to speak to the people in the audience. We have 113 people in the audience, and I need you to understand the critical fight that is ahead of us right now, immediately, right now, in a very don't delay way. We have to raise, I'm going to put some big numbers out there. We need to raise $30,000 over the next few days. We have to do that because, as Jill said earlier, we have to make some down payments so that we can get people on the ground in Indiana to collect the 37,000 signatures. Now, that's 37,000 signatures that are valid that we need to turn in. And we have a goal of collecting close to double that. Typically, when petitions get turned in, a lot of signatures come from people who are not registered to vote, or they haven't put down the correct address, or they, for any number of reasons, a signature might get knocked off. So typical pass rates of signatures is about 60%. That means for every 100 signatures you collect, 60 we could probably consider to be good. Okay, so 37,000 valid signatures means probably around 60,000 signatures that we need to collect on paper. It is a massive lift. We would love for volunteers to do all of that lifting for us out of the goodness of their hearts. But the people who are out there collecting signatures, they have families, they have jobs. It's not that easy all the time to go out and we want people to step up and do that work. But the reality is we are going to have to pay people to collect signatures for us if we want to hit that mark, and that costs money. So the $30,000 that we need to raise over the next 4 days is going to be our down payment for the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we are going to need to pay for signature gathering all the way through April and May. In fact, we have a target of raising $1 million+ by the end of May, but we need to start doing it right now. So what does that mean? What is $1 million right now? That is at the federal maximum primary contribution of $3,300. That's 300 people giving a max out contribution. So our big ask right now for anybody listening in the audience who thinks that now is the moment and this is our fight, because I'm telling you it is now. I want you to think, if you can give $3,300 for us to put that down payment on Indiana ballot access. Right now, we are on a 50-state strategy to win. We want to keep that going, but the money is needed. Can you give $3,300 right now? Because this is the time, this is the moment, and we've got to climb that wall. Anybody in the audience right now, I'm going to shout out your name if you can do it. $3,300 is a max out contribution. We are looking overall, with all of our messaging, with this live stream, with the emails that we're putting out, with some phone calls that we're making, we need 300 people to step up over the next 6 to 8 weeks to give us that maximum contribution of $3,300. Anybody right now in our listening audience can give $3,300. We will take whatever you can give. Believe me, if you shout out a number, this is what I'm going to give. We will acknowledge it. We appreciate it. But right now, we are looking for some max out donors. This is the time. This is the moment. $3,300 is what we're asking. I'm going to give it a few minutes. Anybody? Thank you, Jerry, for $250. We're still looking for some max out contributions. I know it's a lot, but if you have it, now is the time to give it. $3,300. We are looking for some max out contributions. All right. 10% of that next month, Jeanette. We appreciate that. $330. Absolutely. We'll take it. It's very important to us, whatever you can give. All right. So Kirk, $250 also. Fantastic. I want to tell you that we have a goal. We have a goal in this fundraiser. I don't think you can do $10,000 or $20,000 as a direct contribution. Our limits are $3,300. You're not allowed to give more than that. In fact, if you gave us more than that, we'd have to give it back to you because we don't want to violate any FEC rules. So $3,300 limit, $3,300 limit. We are looking for that right now. Can anybody? $200 on Friday for Ariel. Appreciate that very much. All right. So I want you guys to know that we have merchandise. We have a wonderful web store. You can buy t-shirts, you can buy hats, you can buy coffee mugs, you can buy buttons and stickers. We have just added some special items in support of peace and justice in Gaza. There's a new poster and a new sticker. And I want you to know, if you go to the web store and you buy, I think we've got them in a bundle pack for $10, you get a poster and a sticker, that the proceeds from that are going to go to UNRWA, the agency, the United Nations agency that is specifically for humanitarian aid in Gaza, has been defunded. Okay, so this is, this is where we are. We have a government that has just defunded the biggest source of humanitarian aid for Gaza. And so we will be donating all of the profits from the sales of that sticker and poster to UNRWA, UNRWA. We have Amanda Peterson has maxed out to us. Thank you so much. Did I miss anybody else? That is fantastic. Dr. Peterson, thank you so much. Now, you'll notice that Dr. Peterson has actually donated $6,600. So you can donate up front $3,300 for the primary and $3,300 for the general election. We are not allowed to spend the second half of that $3,300 until we get to the general election, but we can put it in a reserve fund and we can spend it once we are past the primary. So I appreciate that so much, Dr. Peterson. Anybody else able to give a max out contribution of $3,300? So I'm going to pause a little bit. Do we want to answer another question while we're waiting? I can answer Martina's question on disability and SSI. I'm just kind of looking through the Q&A right there. We have an incredibly strong disability justice platform. I want to talk about our platform for a minute. We are going to be doing a little bit of a website redesign in a couple of weeks. We're transferring platforms, and once we get that new website up, the full platform will be on there. But I guarantee we have an amazingly strong disability justice platform. We support removing the cap from Social Security completely, and all income should be taxed towards Social Security. We need to not let billionaires get away from their responsibility to the community, and that is SSI. So let's see here. Is there going to be a Green Party United States nominating convention? Yes, there is. So let's talk about the delegates right now. Jill, I'll turn it over to you if you want to talk about how the nominating selection goes, and I'm going to come back to hitting some fundraising a little bit. Go ahead and talk about how the Green Party selects their candidates.
Okay, great. And, we have a really great, news to report there. The bottom line is that we are getting over 90% of the delegates at this point. We have won every single contest. There have been maybe 7 or 8 of them so far. We are about halfway to the number that we need to lock in on the nomination, technically, once we've reached half of the total number of delegates. So we are halfway to that point. And the different state parties have different methods for deciding their delegates. In California, for example, it is a vote. It's a primary vote. And by the way, I heard the other day that we were the biggest vote getter by far there were 3 progressive candidates on the ballot in California. Ourselves, Claudia de la Cruz, the Peace and Freedom, and Cornel West, who were both competing for the Peace and Freedom vote. And we got way more than the combination of all the other progressive candidates on the ballot. We got far and away, I think like twice as many people came out to vote Green as came out to vote for any of the other progressive candidates. So that was great. That was one of the few states where we actually run in a primary election. In most of the states, it's a convention or it is a vote, an informal vote. I wouldn't say informal, but it's not the state, election process. It's a vote that Greens participate in through their state chapter. And we've been winning anywhere from, I think, like 75% up to 100%. So we are coming into heading for the nomination. Can't yet say that it's locked down, but we are sure on a very good track right now. So between that, the ballot access, which is really going gangbusters, we need some support for, but it's going really well there too, like RFK for all of his big pronouncements and his super PACs and his billionaire donors. He's on in like 4 states.
Right.
Cornel West, I think, is on in 6 or so, but they're mostly the small, easy to achieve states.
So I
hard
have
ones.
I have a big announcement. We have Cheryl A is maxing out over YouTube. So Cheryl A watching us over YouTube
Are you
is
serious?
maxing out at $3,300. So that is 2 max out contributions we've got here. I can't tell you how important this is and how enthusiastic I am right now, because that is getting us towards that down payment we have to secure ballot access in Indiana. And I am not sure if Choose Compassion on YouTube is the same person as Cheryl A, but I'm going to give another shout out at Choose Compassion. It is, I'm just told that is Cheryl A. So Cheryl A, Choose Compassion at YouTube. Absolutely amazing for us. Thank you so much. You are part of the revolution. I know we throw the word revolution out there, but this is really a revolution of consciousness. And in order to be successful in this election, we have to get out there and we have to win hearts and minds. We have to make demands that our government should be working for us. And my friend Eric, who, if you all know Savvy Sabs on
RBN.
YouTube, he does a podcast from
Revolutionary.
Revolutionary Blackout Network. Jill has been on her show before, but Eric is Savvy's producer. I did a podcast live stream with him a couple of days ago. Wonderful guy. And so Eric is framing everything in what we have to demand from our government. And you're right. We have to demand that our government works for us and not works for the rich and powerful. We've had far too much of our government throwing crumbs to the working class, to marginalized communities, while they're giving tax breaks to billionaires. And that's part of what we're about. So there are a number of things that we can do on day one. Just for some inspiration about, well, what is a Stein administration going to get done on day one? I'm going to throw it back to Jill. Jill, how about just 2 things that we would do on day one that I want to remind people the people in power could do right now, but they are not doing, but a Stein president will do on day one. Jill, what do you think?
Yeah, so first I just want to give a shout out to Dania K also, I think on YouTube, because this comes through Betsy, that Dania K has contributed $250, and that is awesome. We really thank you. L King also coming in through social media here has contributed 250. So big shout out to both of you. Thank you so much. And before talking about day one, I also just want to say about tonight, it sounds like an impossible thing that we have to raise $1 million. Put this in perspective, RFK has to raise 18 million, he says. Sometimes he says 15, sometimes he says 20. But that's about the cost of what it costs for a regular party that doesn't have a grassroots network and lots of trained up volunteers who are really on fire. So we get a lot, and $1 million is like really pretty reasonable compared to the 20 million that the major party, I shouldn't say major party, but kind of the corporate type candidates have to raise, the parties that don't have a grassroots network. So this is like amazing. And when you break it down, it's not so much. It seems like there's all these signatures we got to get, but yeah, basically we got 3 really tough states, 4 that are kind of bad, if you include Georgia, which is also bad, but it's especially those 3, Illinois, Indiana, and New York, which are very tough. And by focusing on them now, going full bore, these are doable. And the focus tonight, in my view, it's really all about Indiana and raising $30,000. Seems like a lot, but hey, we are well on the way. We're about at 7,000 right now. And we don't have to raise it all tonight, but just by getting the word out and by doing what we can lock in on Indiana. And once we've done that, then we just kind of have these 2 mountains to climb instead of 3 mountains to climb. And it's absolutely doable. And to just put out what kind of things that we can do on day one, some people say, oh, it's going to be so hard. You get into office and then you got to face the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress, and they're not going to cooperate, and it'll be a total stalemate. Well, we have an approach to that. We can talk about our strategy there. Namely, I'll summarize that real quick. For us, the president will not be a commander-in-chief fighting wars all over the world. Our president will be organizer-in-chief and working to help empower everyday people to demand what we deserve from our elected officials. So we're going to talk about holding congressional hearings, about really forcing representatives to hold town hall meetings and so on, so that we can really push the envelope on things that people really want and people will mobilize for. So we have a strategy for that as well, for how we're going to pass Medicare for all. We can pass this. And I think this will be our number one, because it is the low-hanging fruit. It doesn't cost us anything. In fact, it saves us $500 billion a year. So there's absolutely no excuse that we don't have full healthcare coverage right now, head to toe, cradle to grave, everybody covered. That should happen right now. And we can really push this and force our elected officials to support it and move it. But even short of that, on day one, there's a lot that the president can do, including make Julian Assange a free man, as well as Edward Snowden, as well as Leonard Peltier, and, many of the political prisoners. We can, and what's his name? Drake, the whistleblower about drones, that drones really kill mostly innocent people. He is sitting in, he's sitting in a high security, totally dehumanized, automated prison. Just, it's nuts. These people should be free, and they should be compensated for the time that they have unjustly, had their lives taken away from them. So that happens on day one. Another thing on day one is to declare an environmental emergency, because there is a climate emergency. And the minute we do that, we shut down those LNG plants. The building stops. All pipelines that come to the coasts, those stop as well, because the emergency legislation that the president has the power over include our coasts and offshore. So offshore oil and offshore extraction, that shuts down. I mean, there's so much we can do, not only to shut down fossil fuels, but then also we can unleash hundreds of billions of dollars in emergency funding to begin creating the clean energy, renewable, community-based infrastructure to create the just transition, so that communities that have been relying on fossil fuels, like, along the coasts where there are, and Texas and so on, where so many workers have relied on fossil fuel jobs, we can begin training them and reemploying them in the green economy, in ecological restoration, in shoreline restoration, et cetera. There's a lot that can be done, in addition to reviving our productive financial sector, so that instead of being a financialized economy, we become a productive economy once again, and we start creating jobs where we are manufacturing trains, light rail, high-speed rail, intercity. So there's a lot that, I mean, there's just a huge amount that can be done on day one, not to mention cutting off the flow of weapons, which have to be authorized basically through the president and the cabinets. So, Biden has authorized some 100 weapons transfers to Israel that haven't really, been noted or covered, but that's how the weapons actually get there. Congress may appropriate the money, but then the president has to basically send the weapons. So all that shuts down. And by the way, it is illegal for the U.S. to be transferring weapons and providing military aid to any country which is violating international law and which is interfering with the distribution of humanitarian aid, which Israel is absolutely. So all that can be shut down on day one. So, there's a better world awaiting, and
Absolutely.
it starts on day one.
There you have it, folks. So we've got day one plans already, and what Dr. Stein just talked about doesn't even cover, a quarter of what we could be doing on day one, and certainly in the first 100 days, because that's what a lot of people ask. What are you going to do on day one? What are you going to do in the first 100 days? There is so much that we can do, and as soon as we get the website transitioned and our platform up, you will be able to read all about it, and we're actually very excited about our platform. I want to pause again, and I do want to say to Dr. Amanda Peterson that I want to shout you out again for maxing out not only in the primary but for the general also. We as far as I know, we have received that. I also want to give a shout out to Steve Weltzer, who has committed to maxing out over the next couple of months.
Woo!
So we appreciate that, and to Holden Ferguson, who is in the chat, who is going to work hard to raise a couple $1,000s for us. So Holden, we appreciate that very much also. And Steve gets a shout out for his help as a volunteer. If I'm remembering correctly, Steve, you're working for us in New Jersey. So we actually have, if you know anybody in New Jersey, get them to register green. We need people to register green in New Jersey. We need about another 30 or 40 people, I think, to register green in New Jersey. So the way you get on the ballot in various in some states, it varies widely. Sometimes it's a matter of signatures. Sometimes it's a matter of signatures and some money. Sometimes, as in the case of New Jersey, no, actually that's Delaware, right? Delaware, New Jersey is signature gathering, but Delaware, if you're in Delaware, sorry about that. We need the people in Delaware to register green. We need about 30 or 40 more people in Delaware to register green. And just having a certain number of people registered with your party in the state, that gets you on the ballot. So every state has different rules. We have people tracking these rules very, very closely to make sure that we know exactly what the deadlines are, exactly how many signatures we need, exactly how much money that we need to pay, and so on. So I want the people watching us to have the highest confidence that this team knows what it's doing in order to get on the ballot in 50 states. So appreciate that, Steve. Appreciate that, Holden. Appreciate that. Yeah, Jeff, you're right. 800 signatures in New Jersey. Anyway, moving on, let's get back to some fundraising. I'm going to knock the ask a little bit down right now and say, I'm going to cut it in half. Can anybody donate $1,500 right now? We have a goal of raising at least $20,000 out of this fundraiser. So I know we are part of the way there. But if we can get $20,000 out of this fundraiser, we will be considering tonight a success. Hopefully, you have the confidence in Dr. Stein and she's not bought by anybody. We don't take any corporate PAC contributions. This is all grassroots funded. So Dave, I see Dave, but I don't see a last name. I see Dave on Seneca is going to mail a check to bring him up to $250. That's fantastic. That money will be matched by the federal government when we get our matching funds process. Can anybody donate $1,500 right now? $1,500 pays for our people on the ground to collect ballot access signatures in Indiana. The threshold in New York, as you know, let's talk about New York for a second. You probably know that New York is the hardest state to get on the ballot in the entire country. A good deal of the funds that we'll be raising will be going to New York, not just Indiana and Illinois, but to New York. 45,000 signatures in New York. This was done by the Democratic New York State Legislature. They changed the rules to increase that number of signatures. And not only that, they gave us a 6-week window to do it. So one, if you are in New York and you want to help out, ballot signature gathering starts on April 16th. We are planning right now a road trip to New York in addition to a road trip to Indiana. We're going to be in Indiana for 3 days. We're going to be in the Chicago area for a day, and then we're going to New York, and we're going to spend 5 or 6 days in New York. We haven't got the schedule fully worked out, but we have people setting up events in the Buffalo area, in the Rochester area. It looks like we're going to be going to Albany, and we're going to be spending a few days in New York City. But we need people on the ground with ready to go on April 16th to start gathering signatures. 45,000 signatures valid, which means we need to gather about 90,000 signatures. It's a massive lift. It's a huge barrier that the Democratic Party state legislature has set in front of us. But we have to climb it, right? We want to stay on track with a 50-state strategy. If we drop any one of these states, we don't get to move forward saying that we've got a 50-state strategy. Now, you know, we will still be on more ballots than anybody else. And if we're on in 49 states, that will certainly be more than anyone else. But we want to make it 50. Imagine the energy that comes behind saying we got on the ballot in every state in the union and DC, and we go out there and we know that everywhere across the country, people have the option to donate. I mean, to donate. I would like you to donate. The option to vote, right? We have a system right now that pigeonholes you for the most part into voting DNR, and we want to give people actual democracy and a third choice on the ballot. And in saying that, we want other people to be on the ballot also. This isn't just about getting the Green Party on the ballot. This is about actual true representative democracy. So more power to RFK. He's taken big money to do it, but if he gets on the ballot, that's an option for people. That's democracy. And so we support that. So $1,500. I haven't been checking the chat right now, but if anybody has donated $1,500, Graham is donating monthly, but can pledge a further $250 this evening. That is fantastic. And let's see here. Okay, I've backed up in the chat. I'm going to ask again, $1,500 going once, going twice. How about $1,000? Can anybody donate $1,000 right now? $1,000. We got 87 people in the chat. $1,000. Let's go to. I'm going to check out the questions right here. We've answered the ones about how do we respond to people about Trump. Dr. Stein, we've got a question about NATO. Would Dr. Stein remove the United States from NATO? NATO would possibly drag the U.S. into a third world war. Can you talk about that in relation to what's going on right now?
Sure. I mean, NATO is, you know, it's kind of our end run around the United Nations when the United Nations doesn't want to go to war, but we do. You know, we kind of bring NATO along as our excuse, and NATO is how we have basically engaged in most of our recent wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, Libya. You know, NATO has replaced effectively the infrastructure for Europe to have kind of a unified mode of operating. It militarized European relations. Following the Second World War, there was supposed to be a kind of an economic forum for cooperation. There's an acronym for it, which I'm not remembering right now, but there is a kind of security association, which is non-militarized for Europe. And NATO was our effort to maintain kind of military influence and control over Europe. So it's been very problematic. It shouldn't exist. There should be a non-militarized framework for European cooperation and integration. There is some of this through the EU, but there's more that was actually proposed following the Second World War. So there are other ways for Europe to cooperate. We should not be pushing Europe to be militarized. And then you have NATO showing up really in Colombia and all over the world, which is not the North Atlantic, which is what the alliance was supposed to be. And let me mention one other thing, and that is that NATO was supposed to be balancing out the power of the Soviet Union. Well, the Soviet Union broke up, and then the Warsaw Pact, which was like the Soviet Union and other countries, that also broke up too. So the whole rationale for NATO to exist was really, it's blown to smithereens, and NATO is really just an excuse for US militarism and for weapon sales, because they largely use US weapons. So it's great for the US weapons industry. So there's no need for NATO to exist, and there are many problems, and it creates a whole lot of momentum for war. So yeah, no, I would be moving to remove the US from NATO and let Europe do Europe's thing, but that's not for us to be in charge of and militarizing.
And may I add that we
Go ahead,
also
Simone.
have
Thank
this
you.
issue in Ukraine right now because NATO's expansion, which was in violation of agreement that they made, that they wouldn't expand it any further, and they neglected that. They completely violated that agreement, and that's why we have the situation we do now, because NATO has encircled Russia, and that is poking the bear. And to piggyback on the previous question, you said, what do you say about Trump having a second presidency and losing democracy? Well, it's been said that Trump would bring a civil war in America. Biden would bring World War III. But a Green Party was about people, planet, and peace. So we should be voting for peace, not war. And both of these gentlemen represents those dynamics. And unfortunately, we're not hearing that been explained to us on why we should never make somebody with nuclear weapons have no choice and back them into a corner and humiliate them. You have to be very careful with that. This is a very dangerous game that they're playing, and it's unfortunately very profitable. So that's why they won't stop, because the military-industrial complex, I'm living right here in Washington, D.C., we have the highest concentration of weapon manufacturers and gun lobbyists right here in the nation's capital. And that's why both parties are pretty much in lock and step when it comes to foreign policy, because there's a lot of money to be made. Literally, they are literally making a killing. And that's why it's endless wars. And I want to make sure that we understand that our military-industrial complex comes with a warning sign from President Eisenhower, Martin Luther King, and countless other people who told us where this was heading. And we have to put a stop to it now before it's too late.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a couple more shout outs here. Arlene T donated $200. Kirk Doherty, $250. Graham Ashton, $250. So let's get back into a little bit of fundraising. So we've we're going to lower it down a little bit. Can we go to $500? Who can dig deep into their pockets right now? We've still got 83 people on the line. I know many of you have donated, but if we can get a $500 donation right now, we'll give you a shout out. Let's go for $500. Anybody with $500? Thinking about those critical ballot access requirements in Indiana and New York and Illinois. And let's talk about other places that we're gathering signatures in right now. We are on our way to turning in signatures in Nevada. We look to be on the ballot in Nevada. We have people gathering signatures for us in Missouri right now, or Missouri, if that's your preferred pronunciation. We have people gathering signatures for us in Kansas, in Nebraska, in Maryland. If you're in Maryland, you can find out how to get signatures in Maryland. As Jeanette in the chat says, in Massachusetts, we are gathering signatures. We're gathering signatures in New Hampshire. We're gathering them in New Jersey. We're gathering them in Pennsylvania. So you can see, I mean, we got 50 states, Alaska. Don't let me leave out Alaska. We're gathering signatures in Alaska, and many of these states, we are already paying people, like the money that is coming into our campaign is already going to pay people who are gathering signatures in Virginia. I see in the chat, yes, we're gathering signatures in Virginia, in Ohio. We are close to completion in Nevada and Ohio. I think we're over halfway there in Alaska. Some successes that we have had recently, Idaho. You'll see Georgia, our fundraising director. Georgia lives here in Washington State with me. She's actually in Spokane on the eastern half of the state. But Georgia and I met up in Moscow, Idaho, and we spent a few days out there gathering signatures. And it turned out that our efforts, just our personal efforts, pushed us over the edge. We did have some paid signature gatherers in Idaho, but the work that Georgia and I did as volunteers took us over the top. We did clear the hurdle in Idaho. It was actually one of those sort of egregious hurdles because they had shifted the due date up to March 15th, but we got there. It was a big rush to get those signatures in Idaho. We got what we needed in West Virginia. We'll be on the ballot in West Virginia. We cleared the mark in Hawaii. So, you know, as Dr. Stein said, we're about 22 states right now. You know, upcoming, we expect to be turning signatures in shortly in Nevada. It's not quite done yet. I don't want to say that we're there yet, but we're confident we're going to meet the mark in Nevada and Ohio, which will be, and let's put this in context of the Electoral College. Still looking for $500 donations while I'm talking, but let's put this in context of the Electoral College. Like, as Dr. Stein said, we have up to 4 on anyone's ballot, up to 4 pro-genocide campaigns, and there will be 1 anti-genocide campaign. They could split the vote, and in any state, as little as 21% of the vote could get us the Electoral College win in that state. Now, let me put this in the larger context of that all-important 270 votes. Did people know that we are on the ballot in states that total right now 256 electoral votes? Okay, I don't think people know that we are quite that close to 270, but I say that because once we get Nevada and once we get Ohio, that adds another 24. We will be at, what does that do? Let me do the math in my head. That's 280 Electoral College votes. So once we get 2 more states in, we potentially have enough states that if we win, we could win the presidency. Nobody's fooling ourselves on this campaign that it isn't going to be a massively heavy list and that the odds aren't stacked against us. But if you want that glimmer of hope that this could be done and this is the time to do it, now is the time to kick in. And if you can kick in $500, that will be amazing. $250 of that will be matched. So I do want to go, if you can't kick in, let's go down to $250. Can anybody do a $250 donation that the entire thing, assuming you haven't, Kirk, just said he donated $750. Kirk, that is fantastic. That is amazing. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you, Kurt. Woo.
So listen, I think it's really important to talk about the potential here, right? When we're talking about 270 electoral college votes and that we're almost at that, and when we're talking about, young voters across the country. Now, was that poll a nationwide poll for 12% for young voters, Dr. Stein, or was that just in a specific state? Because I haven't seen that one.
Think that was national, but I can check that.
That would be incredible if that was national. I know that a Michigan poll a couple of weeks ago talked about the youth vote, and youth being, I'm an older person, I'm 52, so I don't count as youth anymore. But the youth vote counts up to age 34. So voters 18 to 34 are considered the youth vote. So that demographic was 10% for Dr. Stein 3 weeks ago. Right? So if that is translating now to a national youth vote, imagine the power of young people in this election to say, we've got somebody to vote for. We've got somebody who represents a future that is livable for us. Because I think a lot of people in power right now, I don't say this to be ageist, but we've got people sitting in office right now who come from a different generation. They're 70, 80 years old. They come from wealthy backgrounds. They come from lobbyist backgrounds, and they are making the rules based on a mindset in the 60s, right? But that is not our future, right? The older generations, I'm sad to say, having been in control, have left us with not a great prospect for the future. And young people are recognizing this. Young people are done with war. Young people are done with being denied housing and healthcare and working for, in this economy, $7.25 an hour, as our friend Holden in the chat said. Working for minimum wage in some states is $7.25, right? So this is an administration that represents the future that young people want, a peaceful future, a cooperative future, right? We don't have that. We're not going to get that with the Democratic or the Republican parties. They are both absolutely hopeless on this front. So if we want to secure that right now in 2024, especially with climate change looming over us right now and really threatening the stability of the entire global environment, we've got to put everything we can behind this. So, and as Kelly said in the chat, uncommitted, right? How many people voted uncommitted? Was it around 100,000 voters in Michigan voted uncommitted? 36% of St. Louis, 36, that's Cori Bush's district. 36% of St. Louis voted uncommitted. Now that wasn't the entire state of Missouri. That is a phenomenal number. That is young people and marginalized people showing up and saying, we don't want this anymore. This is not, you're not setting us up for good things, DNR, and in this case, especially Biden, right? We are demanding a better future. So I do have a question for Dr. Stein from the Q&A. It says, as a third-party candidate, how do you plan to overcome the significant institutional barriers and partisan polarization to effectively implement your policy agenda and bring about meaningful change of elected president? And I just want to preface this that the uncommitted vote is really a lead-in to the answer to that question, I think. So, Dr. Stein?
Well, that's right. And let me add to that, reporting about the uncommitted vote. If you look at Michigan, which is the only place I've been able to find the numbers on this, but Michigan reported that they had like 14% uncommitted, which is basically an anti-Biden vote. But then 50% of Democratic voters did not come out to vote, compared to the primary 4 years ago. So you have this huge portion of the electorate now, because that was like somewhere around 500,000 people at least, so 100,000 who were uncommitted, but way more than that who are like, they've thrown in the towel. So there's potentially a huge number of voters here that are voting with their feet, that are not supporting the genocide agenda, that could be won over. And, so there's a lot of people who could be mobilized. And this then fits in with the whole strategy of being the organizer in chief. When Barack Obama came into office, he got elected, he broke a lot of barriers, he had a huge grassroots movement that was very invested in hope and change. But then when Obama got into office, what was the first thing he did? He appointed Larry Summers as the Secretary of the Treasury. Larry Summers, who under Bill Clinton had basically implemented the Wall Street agenda and, got rid of Glass-Steagall and, just created the Wall Street rule and strengthened the commitment to Wall Street and the Wall Street economy and all that. So it was clear which way Barack Obama was actually going to govern on, even before he was elected, when he was just first floating who his appointments might be. I'm sorry, he was elected, but he was not yet installed as president. It was clear that, sorry, folks, you may have expected hope and change, but get ready for hopelessness and more of the same, basically, which is what he was about. But the other thing he did was basically tell people that they were done, that he didn't need them anymore, and they should just kind of go home and, have brunch or something. And in our case, we will only get elected. We would only come to office because we have a strong grassroots movement, which we are in the process of building right now, which you are helping to build by being here tonight and by, helping to make this campaign strong. So we would continue that movement, and everyone should be on notice that if we succeed, we need you. There will be no going home, because we're going to need you to be holding town hall meetings, to be bird dogging your legislators. And if we have this strong grassroots movement, we are going to be electing, Kimon Freeman. We're going to be electing Jason Call. We're going to be electing Justin Paglino and many other really wonderful green candidates who will be carrying our agenda into Congress. So it will be a fight in so many words, but if we get elected, we clearly have the momentum to succeed at that fight every step of the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. Words of inspiration right there. So we're gonna wrap this up in about 11 minutes on the hour. I want everybody to know that Dr. Stein has been grinding at it with the interview circuit over the last week. She did 4 interviews yesterday. 2 of them were public. You can find them on YouTube, and I really highly, so as you're out there and you're wondering, what are Dr. Stein's answers for this and that, these shows that Dr. Stein is going on are covering an incredibly wide range of topics. There is some repetition from show to show, but they always hit on a variety of different. So the Vanguard podcast Dr. Stein did on Monday. I do want to say, if you have questions about what happened with Dr. West and the Green Party, that is, you've got your answers on that podcast. We don't need to say anything about that here, but Dr. Stein was incredibly concise and informative about everything that transpired with Dr. West back in August through October with the Green Party, and how she ended up being the Green Party, I will say, presumptive nominee right now, why she stepped back into the race. A number of well, I only caught the last part of James Fauntleroy's show. He goes by JB Font out there. He's part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. Great interview. And then my friends Lila Charles Lee and Pat Cody, who are in Los Angeles and San Francisco respectively, and they do the Punch Up Pod, and that was a really fantastic conversation. I know that was starting at 8 o'clock at night for Dr. Stein after having done 3 interviews already, and just so much energy and passion, and I really hope that you feel here tonight the passion that Dr. Stein brings to this mission. Like, this is our mission collectively. But Dr. Stein is such an amazing spokesperson. And what is the importance of having somebody like Dr. Stein in? Oh, Tao Z. Tao has donated $500. Thank you
Woo!
so much. And if I've missed anybody, please put it again in the chat then, and I will shout it out. Thank you so much, Tao. But going back to that vision, Molly WC, $250. Thank
Woo!
you so much. The vision of somebody in the White House like Dr. Stein is the leadership, right? And the leadership and the mobilization of people to get behind the changes that are needed, to harass, right? You harass and harangue your elected officials to put the policies in place, because Dr. Stein can't do everything, but she can bring the vision to the table, and that's what is sorely needed right now. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Dr. Stein, if there's anything else that you want to say.
Let's see. I want to just note from Georgia that, again, just a huge thank you to everyone. And I see so many contributions coming in. I can't keep up with them to say all of the thank yous, but just take this as one very big thank you for everything that people are donating tonight. And I also want to say that while we didn't call out, $100 donations, can you give 100 or can you give 50? I just want to underscore that every donation is a complete game changer. So if you've been holding off to wait for your category, your comfort zone, and you can throw $100 into the pot, you're a game changer. And likewise, if you can't do 100, but you can do 50, that would just be totally awesome. And I see a note here from Georgia that we're just $400 short of 8,000, which would close us out tonight at just really a very wonderful jumping off point for this 30,000 that we've got to raise this week. So if you can throw $100 into the hat here, or $50, you would just be a game changer tonight.
And Lisa D just threw in $50 today. Thank you so much, Lisa.
Thank you so much for that. All right, great. For another 50, well, that brings us down to 350 that we need to raise here.
$50 from Bennett.
Out.
Are we going to do this?
Bennett got us another 50. Thank you so much. We got 300. Can we close the gap here? While you're thinking about that, I want to tell you something that totally blew me away today. Today, I had an interview with Haaretz. Does anybody recognize who Haaretz is? This is like a progressive Israeli journal, one of the foremost journals, and it covers a spectrum. So there are some real anti-Zionists and some Zionists in it, but it is Israeli. So I was really like dreading this interview and really kind of preparing for the worst. And it kind of blew me away because the journalist was saying that, and he's like the guy who covers American politics. And what he said was that people are really interested in this campaign and really want to hear what you have to say. And then we went on to have this really amazing discussion about, how we can fix this, how the adults in the room need to stand up, and stop genocide. Today, we have to stop the genocide now. And it's not just that, if we're going to make a lasting ceasefire, a lasting peace agreement, we have to end apartheid and occupation and ethnic cleansing. And I was just so shocked that he was really interested in that and, really wanted to help explain my point of view as a Jew about why, Zionism, in my view, is anti-Jewish, which is what the super Orthodox rabbis also say, that Zionism is anti-Jewish because it violates the basic tenets, the so-called the 10 commandments of the Old Testament, the 10 commandments. And so these rabbis were asked, well, why is Zionism anti-Jewish? And the rabbi answered because it's against Judaism to steal and to kill, which is like implicit in Zionism, which is stealing the land of other people. And it's been, it's been genocide in the making, and all that has to be fixed. But I was just so heartened to hear that he was really interested in covering our perspective and how could we begin to make peace. I expressed the point of view that it's not only the Palestinians who are being slaughtered here, but this also bodes really bad for the Jews that are, in historic Palestine, that are in Israel right now. They don't have a future under this current approach as well, which is just mobilizing incredible hostility. And Israel, along with the US, has become, really the pariah states. And Israel doesn't stand alone here. It stands with the US. And our job is to take our government, under our democratic control and put an end to all of this. And yeah, that's a problem for Israel, but it's also a problem here for America. And we need the adults in the room to take charge, and get the bullies in the schoolyard, which is what American foreign policy is about. It's all about full spectrum dominance, which is a fancy way of saying that we will dominate all areas of the world in all dimensions of potential competition. We will dominate it. And that's what we've been doing. And we've been, murdering millions of people here in the process. And that's what the problem is in Israel. The problem is not just Israel, it's that it is the unsinkable battleship for the US of A. But it was so heartening to me to see that, like, there are people in Israel that are really interested in our understanding of this. And I asked if he could put us in touch with some of these peace groups in Israel that are advocating, for an end to Zionism, from the inside. So I'm just really
I'll
excited
just
about
say that
it.
I reached out to him today, and he's going to get me a list of organizations tomorrow, and we can start doing some outreach there. And that is so amazing. I've just got a note here that we got over $8,000. Beth, I don't know how much you donated, but I also, Donald got us to 8,500. This is so fantastic. Pete and Anthony, David Swift. We are now, I'm being told right here, we are over $8,500 right now. So this is amazing. I would like to, Kimon, you've been so patient while we've been sitting here talking about raising money and Dr. Stein taking the floor, but I would like to offer our special guest, Kimon Freeman, who is running in DC. Kimon, if you want to give a little shout out to your race and then kind of close us out with some words of wisdom, we're going to wrap this thing up. This has been amazing, everybody. I'm going to stop talking and hand it over to Kimon. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you again for this opportunity to speak to the doctor in chief here, and thank you for everyone who has contributed to our campaign. It's a joy to see the outpouring of support. I even had a few drop some coins to our campaign. That's Freeman, the number 4 Congress.com. So thank you very much for those people that did that. But I wanted to back up real quick because we said something about the politics of fear. And when Dr. Stein quoted our beloved Alice Walker, when we said that the greatest power is convincing people they don't have any, I had the opportunity to interview Alice Walker in Cuba this past February. And I asked her, now mind you, this is a woman who had crosses burnt in her yard by the Klan in Mississippi in the 60s. Okay, just want to put it in context. And I asked her, what was the greatest obstacle she had to overcome? She said, fear. So I just want to put that out there. So when we talking about, Trump or Biden, we got to save democracy. We cannot operate from fear. We have to actually do what we want. We have to fight for what we want, not what we are afraid of. My greatest first lady is not Michelle Obama. My greatest first lady is Eleanor Roosevelt. And she said that when you face your fears, you gain the confidence to face everything else, that you must face the one thing that you're afraid of. And that is I think that is where we are at right now. That's where we are right now. And we must face our fears. We must step out into the unknown. And if Australia can have 50 different political parties, surely America can have more than two. So I hope that gives enough ammunition to all our supporters to fight the good fight, to have those dinner table debates, because that's where the revolution is going to take place, across the dinner tables, and make sure that this point is expressed explicitly. And it's not that it's out of reach, it is actually in view. And the system that we now have is unsustainable. And I'm going to do my part here for the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., and I hope you guys will support us. And I look forward to when Dr. Stein comes back to DC and we can have an even bigger outpouring her next time here. And our campaign kicks off officially next Thursday, April the 4th, which is the anniversary of Martin Luther King. And it's not just the anniversary of his assassination, rather, excuse me, but it's also the anniversary of the speech that got him killed, which was the Beyond Vietnam speech, the anti-war speech, when he spoke out against the military-industrial complex. And he gave that speech April 4th, 1967. And he was assassinated on April 4th, 1968, to communicate to everyone that this was the real red line here. And for those who don't know, Stokely Carmichael, also known as Kwame Ture, had an office in DC on U Street. And the way information traveled then is that he got the call. So before the real Robert Kennedy got and made that speech on the TV cameras, before Walter Cronkite or whoever news anchors announced it, Stokely Carmichael got a phone call. And so he organized the first, I don't want to call it a riot, I call it a rebellion, even though Martin Luther King said a riot is the voice of the unheard. But he organized the first rebellion, and it was launched right here in DC on 14th and U. The first MLK rebellion started in Washington, DC, the first city to rebel. And it was at that intersection of 14th and U. There's a plaque there commemorating this. And our actual campaign kickoff party is happening at 14th and U. And I just want to acknowledge that because we're here to explicitly express the radical side of Martin Luther King. And shout out to the artist, Moo Fresh, who is supporting our campaign and making sure people come out. And we might want to bring more artists into this fold as we go forward and try to reach more people. And finally, let me say is that the greatest power is convincing people they don't have any, but we have to use that power. We have to use that power. And one of the things that is a power that's been untapped is the fact that most of our college kids go to school in bigger cities, away from home. They actually qualify for residency in those cities that they go to school in, and they can vote in those cities. And we should register those people because they are, as you said, 18, and they are overwhelmingly, by and large, progressive. And I think that that's an underutilized power that we need to tap into. Here in the nation's capital, we have over 80,000 college kids from 20 different universities. And our campaign is targeting them for new voters. So I hope that will resonate with this campaign here, and we can all celebrate a victory for the people, the planet, and peace come November.
Love it.
Amazing.
Amen to that.
It is 5 minutes past the hour. That was such an inspiring speech to see us to the end of our fundraiser. Thank you so much to everybody who has donated, everybody who's listening, everybody who's going to get out there in the streets and collect signatures, who's going to talk to their friends and their family and build this campaign. We are going to take this all the way to the White House, everybody. I feel it. I feel it. And thanks again to Dr. Stein for being such an amazing standard bearer for this movement in this moment. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Kamo. Thanks, everybody. All right.
Okay. So thank you, everybody in the room. For those of you on the East Coast, we can let's go get some rest. I know I need it. I'm very close to hitting my own my own goals for my workplace. So if I can do a little bit more work tonight, then I can put my full day into the campaign tomorrow. So I'm very, very close. Thank you.